Hi, my name is Annie. I'm a PhD student studying psychology at a university called UCL in London. Hi, this is Annie. So, as you know, I'm doing what's called a PhD in psychology, but I thought that you might be interested to know a little bit more about what a PhD is and why I'm doing it. So, before explaining what it is, I'm going to explain a little bit about how I got here. So after I finished school, I moved from where I was living with my parents, which was in Oxford, to London, and I did an undergraduate degree where I studied a subject called psychology. Psychology is what's known as the scientific study of the mind and behaviour. So basically it's all about trying to better understand how people think and why they behave in the way that they do. So I found this really interesting when I finished, and I thought 3 years of learning about it wasn't enough. So I decided to do what's called a master's. So this is an extra degree that you can do once you've finished your undergraduate degree. And I went on to study the science of the mind and the brain, which is basically psychology again. So my degree was 2 years, and during this master's degree, I worked on projects, research projects, which are designed to answer questions about psychology. So here's some examples of the projects that I found the most interesting. I did a project on how do babies' brains learn about language. So in this project I worked with little babies only 12 months old, and we played them clips of people talking, and we looked at the way that their brains responded to the sounds by using a special cap which recorded their brain activity. So that was really cool, so I helped out with that project. And then another project I did was exploring why some people don't recognise faces. So this is called prosopagnosia, or face blindness, and it actually affects 2.5% of people, and people with face blindness can't recognise other people, even their best friends or their parents, so we wanted to understand why this happens and how it develops. So I found these projects really interesting, and I wanted to be able to design a project myself to answer the questions that I'm interested in. So that's basically what a PhD is. So I'm still working at a university, like I was in my undergraduate degree and master's, but now I'm spending 3 years looking at my own projects. So my PhD is looking at how teenagers think about social interactions, and this would be like interactions with your friends or with your teachers. And I'm particularly interested in how taking someone else's perspective, that is, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and understanding what they're thinking, how that contributes to having good friendships and good social relationships, and how that relates to having good mental health.
Ask the expert. Ask the expert.
How can you look after our mental health?
Does yoga help our behaviour?
Why are we scared of spiders and other phobias?
What is a panic attack? How do we get it?
Ask the expert.
Lots of you asked really good questions about mental health and how you can look after it. So I just wanted to give a kind of quick overview of the really important things that we can do to look after our mental health. And I wanted to start by saying that we all have mental health, and it's really important to look after it. So one way that we can look after it is by eating healthily. So of course it's okay to treat yourself once in a while, but what we eat is really linked to how we feel. And if we eat healthily, so we have regular meals, we eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day, we drink lots of water, this is not only good for our physical health, but it's actually really important for your mental health. The second thing you can do is getting enough sleep. So getting enough sleep is really important for your mental health. When you don't sleep enough, this can lead to you feeling very tired during the day, and it can make it harder to cope with the things that happen during your day that you might usually find very easy. And so that can mean that you can get stressed and anxious. And actually, when you don't sleep enough, your body produces more of a hormone, which is basically a chemical, which is called cortisol. And this hormone actually makes you feel more stressed just in itself. So not only are you tired, but you have more of this hormone, and it can mean that you get worried and anxious when you might not usually. So it's really important to try and get a good night's sleep when you can. The third thing, which is what my PhD is about, is connecting with others. So you've probably all had an experience where you're in a very bad mood, and then you talk to a friend or a teacher or your parent, and suddenly you feel better. So scientists have actually found that communicating with others and spending time with other people can make you feel less worried and sad, and it's really important for your overall physical and mental health. So the fourth thing you can do is exercising and staying active. So this is great for your mental health and well-being, and when I say exercise, I don't necessarily mean just doing sports classes or going to the gym. There's lots of ways that you can be active and support your mental health, like doing yoga, going for a walk, playing games with your friends, and all of these things are good for your mental health. It's not just things that you typically think of as sport. Lastly, the last thing you can do, well, there's probably more, but the last thing I'm going to talk about is doing something creative. So engaging in creative things like playing games, listening to music, drawing, painting, writing, or whatever else you enjoy doing. It's really good for your mental health, and it's great if you can keep doing these things.
Ask the experts. Ask the experts.
How do I control my anger and sadness? Which emotion makes us feel like we need a hug?
Why do we feel negative emotions? Why don't we like change?
If we had no emotions, what would happen?
Why do we turn emotionless? And is there a cure if we turn emotionless?
Why do we show expressions on our faces?
Ask the experts.
So lots of you asked really good questions about emotions, what they are, why we feel them, and how they vary. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. So emotions are strong feelings that we have, and you all know you've had emotions and you feel different emotions every day. Sometimes we can be happy, sometimes we can be excited, sometimes we can be sad or even angry. So we can't always control our emotions because they're the way that our bodies and our brains respond to the different situations that we're in. So emotions are actually very important because they help us to take actions, to avoid dangers, and to make decisions. They also help us to understand other people, and they help other people to understand us. So this is why, or one of the reasons why, we show emotions on our faces. And they also enable us to do all of these things without having to think too much about it. You just have a kind of instant reaction, which your emotions help with. So for example, if you hear an alarm, you know that an alarm usually indicates danger, right? So when you hear this alarm, you have an emotional response that might be worry or confusion. And that pushes you to move to get out of the danger that you might be in, or to ask somebody what's happening without too much thought. So lots of you asked why we feel negative emotions like anger and sadness and worrying, and that's a really interesting question. So negative emotions can actually be useful to us. So like I just said, for example, it can help us to avoid danger. But another reason why, for example, anger could be useful is if you see someone being treated unfairly, or you get treated unfairly yourself, you might feel anger, and that prompts you to do something about it. And for example, we should be angry if someone is being treated unfairly, or if you're being treated unfairly. That's a normal reaction. Sometimes we can feel negative emotions like anger or worry, even when we don't want to, or when there isn't any obvious reason why. And this happens a lot to everyone. It's completely normal. We can try and avoid this by doing our best to look after our mental health. So like I talked about before, this is things like eating well, sleeping enough, exercising, calling a friend, or doing something creative. If we're having negative emotions, all of these things can help us to calm down, manage our behaviour, and help us to put our worries and our anger in perspective. Sometimes negative emotions can be particularly overwhelming. For example, if you're having a panic attack. So this is when your body's response to danger, the normal response, gets exaggerated. And it's not just danger, it can be distress or excitement too. So although panic attacks aren't dangerous, they can be very scary when you have them because you don't know what's happening and you feel very intense bad emotions. So if you have a lot of panic attacks, then you might need to see a doctor, but there's also things that you can do yourself to help. And like I said before, these are the things that we do to look after our general mental health. So although we all feel negative emotions sometimes, by looking after our mental health, this can really help us manage our own behaviour and our own emotions.
Ask the expert.